Hey, Student Life, this is Pastor Brandon here coming at you for the digital gathering again. We'll do these videos every Wednesday. They drop at 11 a.m. to our social media pages as well as the YouTube page. And I hope you're tuning in. I hope you're being encouraged during this time as we seek to walk through the book of Habakkuk together to give us some sort of biblical underpinning in these uncertain times. But before we get there, I have a few introductory items I want to bring to you. The first one is this. If you've not connected with us on House Party for our community groups from 6 to 8 on Sunday nights, I would encourage you to do that. It was so much fun and so encouraging to see all of you engaging and being on that and just to see your faces on Sunday. So I hope you're connected there. If not, you can find a way to do that through Realm and on our social media pages. And then that leads me to the second one is just to follow our social media pages for weekly resources and opportunities that we're putting out during this time. Right now there's a TikTok challenge going on. We plan on doing weekly challenges like this. And just like most of us during this time, we're having to get resourceful in a lot of ways. But the person right now for who gives us the winning video, and winners are just picked at random, will receive one of these treasures that I received this Christmas season during our Leader White Elephant page. It's quite glorious, isn't it? So on to the book of Habakkuk. This session, we're asking, is God in control? And something's still wrong with this picture, Lord. What do we do in those seasons where we see chaos around us and we have to ask, is God in control in the midst of all this? And what's he doing? And is that even an encouragement or a discouragement for us? And so the book begins with this godly man in the midst of a national crisis. And he's overwhelmed and frustrated like many of us are during seasons like this. This is a unique historical situation we find ourselves in, but it is not the only time God's people have found themselves in situations like this. So the book, though, begins with the prophet Habakkuk complaining to God, bringing all these difficult things to God that he sees going on around him. But then it ends with this hymn of praise and this prayer of him pressing on confidently in his trust in God. And so there is much help for us and much to gain for us in looking at a book like this together. So let's look at Habakkuk 1 verses 5 through 6 together. This is the Lord's answer to Habakkuk. And listen to what he says. Look among the nations and see. Wonder and be astounded. For I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if I told you. For behold, I'm raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. And then he goes on to describe the Chaldeans, or we know them also as the Babylonians in this time. They are a fearful, ruthless, violent nation. And so God answers Habakkuk in a surprising way. Not only does God actually affirm that he is in fact at work, but he takes Habakkuk sort of behind the scenes, backstage, to show him what he's up to. And what's surprising more is God says he's enlisting a ruthless and a terrible nation to purge the wickedness from Judah that Habakkuk was complaining about in the previous text that we read. This later is going to be something that raises some big concerns for Habakkuk, as you might imagine. So stay tuned. But God urges his prophet in the midst of this to look up and broaden his horizons. God gives him 3 commands actually that fit this. The first one, these are all found in verse 5. The first one is look. The second one is observe. The third one is be astonished. So God's answer shows us that he cares about the concerns of the prophet, that he cares about the concerns of those who come to him in prayer in these ways. But also, it's that his response, God's response to Habakkuk in these times, will astonish him on the other side of this. Don't miss this. It's not, though, however, going to come through the relief of horrible things, God says. At least not yet. In fact, things are actually about to get a lot worse. So what does this mean for us? So while God has not pulled back the curtain and showed us what he's up to behind the scenes in our current situation that we find ourselves in, as a matter of fact, these situations are full of heavy and hard and confusing things that I don't want to diminish, when I'm not trying to diminish at all in this. But there are some things that we can learn from this passage in Habakkuk, God's response to Habakkuk. And the first one is this, that God is the one at work. It might seem like the only thing at work right now is a spreading virus to most of us. But here's the thing, God is not idle. He is not asleep at the wheel. He is not aloof to this situation. And in many ways, that can be the very frustrating thing, more than anything. The Christian struggle, though, is about holding difficult things up to God while at the same time trusting that God is at work, and let him be God in the midst of that, and knowing that he will do what is just and good and right in the end, as he's promised us even in this book. You see, he's already on the other side of this, and he calls us to trust him today. The second reality for us is not only is God the one at work, but God will work wonders. We see this in verse 5 as well. Again, remember, God calls Habakkuk to look, to perceive, and to be amazed. And so this is the reality that God is going to use unthinkable means, and God uses unthinkable means, usually by humbling, at the same time, humbling human wisdom to do what is just and good. So this shows us the impossibility of assuming that we know how God would deal with things that happen in the world. And so just when you think you've got God's purposes figured out, we will come again to realize what Isaiah 55, 8 through 9 records. My ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. As high as the heavens are above the earth, so much more are the thoughts and ways of God more than ours. And so you see, even in the most terrible things, the reason I can say that this is a reality for us, that God is in control, that he is working wondrous things out, is that the most unjust event in our history became the most marvelous. Jesus, who is God in the flesh, the only innocent person to have ever lived, entered into the stage of history, and he died for those who are rightfully guilty, that we might have eternal hope in him, set apart from sin, sickness, and even death, for those who would place themselves in his care through trust, and we call this faith. And so I have to ask you, are you entrusting yourself to his care? It doesn't mean that terrible things won't still happen, but it comes with the full hope of knowing that even in the midst of these terrible things, that God is at work, and he is the one working out the full realization of hope. And so your faith and my faith will only grow when we have to exercise it in seasons like this. And this is where faith really comes in. Do we trust God even when we have no idea what's going on? Even when there's great difficulty around us? So friend, look, observe, trust and be astonished with me in this season. I'm going to give you these directives again. So, parents, here's your directive for this week I'd encourage you in. Lead your family to pray through Psalm 46 together this week. It's a powerful passage that describes God's nearness to us and his help even in times of trouble. And so if you can, as you pray through that as a family, then I'll invite you to share a testimony from your own life of how God has proven this true to you, that he's been a help for you even in the times of trouble. Then, students, here's what I want us to do. Here's what I want to challenge you to do. I want to ask this question of you. Does it bring you more comfort or more discomfort right now to know that God is in control, even when terrible things happen? And then how can you root yourself and broaden your horizons to know that God is working in the midst of all this so that you might trust him in the midst of that? So stay tuned then for next week's digital gathering. It's dropped via Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook every week, Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Feel free to share it. Send it to your friends, anyone you might find that could be encouraged by this. And if you are in need of prayer, or if there's a way we can serve you, or just have conversation around these things, feel free to shoot us a direct message here, or even on our house party conversations as well. But we love you. We'll see you next time.